High class, in the centuries after the breakdown of Neo-Assyrian rule, the Persian Empire emerges between 560 and 331 BCE in Southwest Asia. Now, in contrast to that predecessor of the Neo-Assyrian, its rule is going to be based more on persuasion and mutual benefit than on domination and raw power. The Persians were a nomadic group that had spread from Central Asia and expanded on the Iranian plateau at the end of the previous millennium, and their skill using bows on horseback was important to their early success. Now, Cyrus the Great, who rules from 559 to 529 BCE, was the great unifier of Persian tribes. To build this new empire, the Persians looked to the ideology and institutions of others like the Babylonians and the Assyrians and other indigenous people. But as the Persians had no urban tradition of their own, they're going to come up with something a little different. They're going to use persuasion rather than violence to subdue other peoples. The Persians will become the most impressive superpower in the world, the largest empire to the time, and will end up with the largest known concentration of wealth anywhere in the ancient world. And how do they do that? This is a pretty good map of their expansion efforts over time. Now, over this Persian Empire, Cyrus is going to present himself as the benevolent king who had liberated his subjects from the oppressor kings. And after a victory in Babylon, he claimed it as a sign that the city's gods had turned against their king. So he releases the Jews from their captivity there. They had been there under Nebuchadnezzar since 587 BCE, after which they returned to Jerusalem and built their temple. The Greeks, observing this, viewed Cyrus as a model ruler. He started a public works building campaign that his predecessors will add to, roads, and also qanats, a Persian water moving technique class to use in the hot arid regions that is still in use today. Now, Darius will succeed Cyrus in 521, and he is going to manage both to expand dramatically and keep the state on solid footing during his reign. He suppresses various revolts, which he has memorialized in the monumental rock relief that he carved in Iran. And he conquers territories held by dozens of ethnic groups between the Indus River and the Mediterranean and Aegean seas and manages them. He is going to institute a dynamic administrative system. Instead of coming in and imposing Persian customs on these peoples, he draws on their local traditions and institutions in order to control them. So unlike the Neo-Assyrian Empire, Persians believed that all of their subjects could be equal. They were required only to be loyal and to pay tribute to the king. To administer these diverse populations, different languages, different religions, different gods, officials employed local people and used local languages, and the empire is going to use Aramaic as its official language because a lot of the scribes knew it, but when they're ruling in their territories, they allow them to use their own language. Now, on a ground level, Darius is going to place satraps, regional governors class drawn from his family as local rulers. So he's going to put his people in place, and their loyalty will be reinforced by close monitoring from the military, tax collectors, and spies of the king, the eyes and the ears of the king. And to finance this, he uses a system of fixed taxation and formal tribute allocations, and it works like a well-oiled machine. And to integrate the empire, he builds roads like the Persian Royal Road and standardize both currency and weights and measurements. And that's really going to facilitate trade. He institutes a courier service admired throughout the known world. Here is their motto, class: neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Now, does anybody know who else has this as their motto? If you said the United States Postal Service, you were correct. There were slaves in the Persian Empire. Most were prisoners of war or civilians who refused to submit, and Darius was well known for his large harem guarded by the eunuchs. The Persian ideology and social structure derived from religious ideas grounded in their pastoral and tribal roots, and at the core of this is going to be Zoroastrianism. This is going to be a religion, a formal religion based on the teachings of Zoroaster. And it's written down in the Avesta around the 3rd century BCE, and it became the empire's religion. The religion divided gods and human choice between good and evil. Ahura Mazda was the supreme god responsible for all that was good, and he was believed to have appointed the monarch or the ruler over the people and lands. And his adversary was Harima, representing the total opposite, evil personification. They existed in a perpetual struggle for the universe, and humans could be independent actors in choosing good or evil, which had implications for their rewards or punishments in the afterlife. Now, at its core, Zoroastrianism has 4 different components, and one of those is dualism, which means the universe is ruled by 2 gods, good versus evil. Ethical is another component. Man has free will to choose between good and evil. You have a choice. Judgment, all men will be judged for their deeds. And also a Messiah. A Messiah will come before the world ends to offer salvation to all. The key quote from Zoroaster is good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. According to Scholars Class, Zoroastrianism has great influence on the development of future religions we'll talk about, like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Persians took worship very serious, and according to legend, Darius had a high-ranking noble and his entire family killed for interrupting his worship. Kings, again, were perceived to be appointed by Ahura Mazda and enjoyed absolute authority. Though they were also tightly bound to follow the guidelines of Zoroastrianism, additionally, they were expected to be physically superior as horsemen and warriors. Socially, the Persian Empire had 4 large, diverse groups with clearly defined roles. A ruling class of priests, nobles, and warriors. Beneath them, an administrative and commercial class of scribes and bureaucrats, as well as merchants, and then an artisan class, and finally peasants or slaves. The nobles and merchants were especially important in supporting the king, as the former often ran his satrapies and the latter maintained trade. This relationship was often ritualized by royal gifts from the king to privileged nobles, which solidified their relationship. Women in the Persian Empire was typically held in high esteem, second only to Egyptian women. Still, by far and away, Egyptian women have the most rights within this ancient time. They could own land. They could receive equal pay in the Persian Empire. They could travel freely, and that is an important one right there. Accounts exist of royal women developing social policies, and they could even serve in the military. There are several accounts of Persian women warriors. But of course, there's always got to be the bad girls. Musa, aka Thermusa, was presented to the king Phraates, who ruled from 37 to 2 BCE, as a concubine from the early Romans. She won favor with the king and became his principal wife until she had him poisoned to death in order to elevate her son, and she co-ruled with her son for a period of time. Class, the empire is going to hold power for more than 2 centuries, though it will be weakened by conflict with the Greek city-states and eventually conquest by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE. And this is a picture I'll leave you with of Darius's incredible relief you can still see today in Iran. As usual, keep in touch.